10. It's illegal to leave. North Korea is the only country in the world that forbids its citizens from leaving as a standard rule. Exiting the country requires the government's permission, which is almost never granted to ordinary civilians. Those who are allowed to travel are usually either high-ranking officials who are loyal to the Kim regime, or they're under constant watch by someone who is. Diplomats, elite scholars, athletes, and workers are among those who are most commonly granted permission to leave North Korea. After escaping the country, math Olympiad Jong-yul Kim revealed that he and others were strongly cautioned not to let capitalism and other fixtures of the outside world sway them into believing life outside the Hermit Kingdom is better. He also recalled being specifically warned not to interact with South Korean competitors. In addition to being closely monitored during their time away, North Korean citizens who leave the country are subjected to intensive intelligence debriefs upon their return to ensure that no free-thinking rhetoric makes its way into their mind. 9. You might die trying. North Korea shares an 880-mile-long border with China. Much of it is dominated by inhospitable terrain. Most defectors escape to China by sneaking across the Yalu River. These crossings are often made under the cover of night, and even then, defectors risk being caught by border guards, who are reportedly under orders to shoot defectors on sight. In the past, people who were caught trying to escape were typically either executed following their capture, or slowly worked and starved to death in one of the regime's brutal labor camps. After superseding his late father as North Korea's dictator in 2011, Kim Jong-un tightened security at the border, which was already heavily guarded to begin with. In recent years, he's stepped up these efforts even more by deploying more guards to the most popular defector crossings with orders to shoot escapees unconditionally. Due to these heightened measures, defections are reportedly at their lowest in years. It's extremely rare for defectors to escape via the country's southern border with neighboring South Korea, which runs along the 38th parallel. Known as the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, it's ironically one of the world's most heavily guarded borders. Measuring roughly 2.5 miles wide and 154 miles long, it's lined with several 100,000 combat-ready troops on both sides. The DMZ is also surrounded by razor wire fences and littered with landmines, making even the less guarded parts of it extremely dangerous and difficult to cross. Much of this forbidden stretch of land has remained untouched by humans since the 1960s. Defectors rarely try to escape via the DMZ, and not many succeed. Those who make it across are usually either exceptionally agile or just incredibly lucky. Among the few who have done it was a 30-year-old career gymnast who managed to scale the 10-foot perimeter fence and sneak across unharmed, something that a person of average capabilities would be far less likely to accomplish. 8. Other escape routes. North Korea shares a border with South Korea, China, and Russia. As you just learned, China is arguably the easiest country to escape to, while it's almost impossible to cross through the DMZ into South Korea. It's also extremely rare for defectors to traverse the heavily guarded 10-mile border with Russia. Like China, Russia considers any unauthorized North Koreans in the country to be illegal immigrants rather than refugees. Instead of offering humanitarian aid, defectors are immediately sent back to North Korea. With a large portion of North Korea being bordered by ocean, some may wonder why it's not more common for defectors to leave by boat. Obtaining a boat, even in ramshackle condition, is extremely difficult in the first place. And even if someone manages to get past that hurdle, they probably won't make it far in the country's heavily patrolled coastal waters. And if they do, the conditions at sea are likely to kill them. It's simply not a feasible plan. If you had to sneak out of the country, how would you do it? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 7. Getting through China. Many, if not most, North Korean defectors who make it across the Yalu River to China rely on human smugglers to help them navigate a roundabout route to South Korea, where escapees receive help starting new lives. It's expensive to hire a smuggler, and it also comes with a risk of being caught. the smugglers themselves also take major risks. And as the Chinese government intensifies its surveillance of the country's population, fewer people are willing to get into the smuggling trade. And while there's no denying that smugglers typically exploit desperate people for profit, they often play a key role in getting escapees where they need to go. Even workers who have permission to be in China but don't want to return to North Korea have struggled in recent years to find people willing to help transport them. As a result, many North Koreans end up stuck in China or are caught in the country illegally and sent back to the Hermit Kingdom. As of August 2023, around 2,000 defectors were being detained in China, where they are considered illegal immigrants rather than refugees. COVID-19 lockdown restrictions on both sides of the border made it even more difficult for defectors to leave North Korea and enter China. According to the New York Times, the number of North Koreans who reached South Korea dropped from 1,047 in 2019 to just 63 in 2022. 6. Public executions. Defectors who get caught trying to escape may still face death even if they're not shot on sight. North Korea has a long-standing history of carrying out public executions for an array of crimes, including petty offenses like theft or getting caught with foreign media. As of 2019, there were 318 identified execution sites throughout the country, where entire communities, including children and the prisoner's family, are forced to come outside and watch. This is obviously done to deter people from doing things that could land the same fate. A lot of executions are carried out at forced labor camps and political prisons. In these cases, family members who are not also imprisoned are simply left to wonder whatever happened to their loved one, who they most certainly know they'll probably never see again. And in many cases, an offender's family is imprisoned simply for being related to the person, which means that they'll never have the chance to even try escaping the country, and that they too may ultimately be executed. 5. There are other things to worry about. North Korea is rife with poverty and its effects, which include food insecurity, a lack of access to healthcare, and difficulty meeting other basic needs. When getting through each day is a challenge, it's hard for someone to look beyond their immediate survival needs and plan for the future. During the 1990s, the country experienced a major famine that killed millions of people. Known to North Koreans as the Arduous March, it came during a period of economic decline and was triggered by a series of severe floods that washed out a large portion of the country's farmable land. North Korea never reached the same level of self-sufficiency that predated the famine, and continues to occasionally rely on foreign food donations to keep its population fed. Defections actually rose during the famine period, and food instability remains a factor in many people's decisions to flee. But it can also prevent someone from escaping, especially in cases when a person is weakened by malnutrition, age, or other ailments. Escaping North Korea and getting through China entails crossing rivers, climbing, long car rides, sleeping in uncomfortable spaces, and lots of walking, including over rough terrain, which means that a person has to be in decent health and physical shape. In addition to the obstacles faced by the elderly, sick, and other vulnerable people, many must choose between staying in North Korea or leaving their small children behind, because it's not feasible to escape with them. Simply put, North Korean citizens are often faced with difficult personal circumstances and decisions that affect their ability or willingness to flee. And it's probably safe to assume that a lot more people would at least try if they felt they were in a better position to succeed. 4. There's no freedom of information. Foreign media is banned in North Korea, including news, movies, and TV shows. Civilians are also banned from having the internet at home. Any internet access is heavily censored and monitored, and home telephones are a luxury typically reserved for elite officials, rather than an everyday item. Cell phones are common but rudimentary, with no internet or ability to make or receive foreign calls. This is all done to restrict the Korean people's access to information from the outside world, which challenges the Kim regime's narrative that they live in the best country on the planet and that life isn't better anywhere else. Some people manage to get their hands on banned materials, including DVDs and USB drives containing bootleg movies and TV shows that are smuggled into North Korea from China. This flow of goods has helped a lot of people realize that a lot of what they were taught about their country and other places simply isn't true. And freedom isn't a hard concept to sell. It's something that a lot of people are naturally going to want when they see and learn about it. And this is one of many things that compel people to defect from North Korea. But there are still limits on the amount of information people have access to, and many are afraid to take the risk, since getting caught with banned materials can easily land someone and their entire family in a forced labor camp. 3. Entire families are punished. Successfully escaping North Korea does not mean the end of a person's troubles. They still have their family to worry about, and the decision to flee is made knowing that their loved ones may be punished. To discourage citizens from defecting, the government often follows a policy of imprisoning 3 generations of an escapee's family, in many cases for life, and even if they had no knowledge of the defectors' plans to flee. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, many children are born into captivity and raised as prisoners because they are considered guilty by blood. The 3-generation policy dates back to 1950, when it was implemented with the goal of eliminating entire bloodlines of counter-revolutionary North Koreans. In addition to dictating the punishment of defectors, it is often applied to people who are accused of committing political crimes. In cases where a defector's family is not imprisoned, they can count on being under heightened surveillance. And in these cases, it's often just a matter of time before authorities find a reason to make an arrest. In early 2023, an entire family was arrested after a mother was caught making banned phone calls to her daughter who had escaped to the south. According to Radio Free Asia, the person who's caught maintaining contact with a defector is usually the only one who's punished. It's unusual for their family members to be considered guilty by association, leading to speculation that the regime is cracking down on the practice by intensifying the consequences. Imagine knowing that your parent or child could go to prison for life for your actions, or even for taking your phone call. And it's not hard to understand why many people are reluctant to flee North Korea. 2. No freedom of movement. Most people can move around freely within their country, unless they're on a probation for a crime. And even then, they're usually at least allowed to travel throughout their state, and to leave the state with permission. Sadly, this is a lot more freedom than a typical law-abiding North Korean civilian has. In North Korea, only the elite own or have access to vehicles. And there's a severe fuel shortage due to international sanctions imposed by the US and other countries. As a result, the Hermit Kingdom's roads are noticeably bare, even in cities. Traveling to another part of the country requires permission from authorities or a work supervisor, as well as a reason. The military will often make sure that a person with special permission to travel gets off the train at their designated stop, and that they return to where they came from. Furthermore, the Kim regime has forcibly relocated hundreds of thousands of civilians to remote and less desirable parts of the country that are difficult to escape. This is said to occur on a fairly routine basis and is often carried out as a punishment for political reasons. 1. Political prison and forced labor camps. It's believed that there are 4 political prison camps and as many as 20 forced labor camps throughout North Korea. The earliest among them were modeled after Soviet gulags, and the system has expanded massively in the decades since it was first implemented. Many, if not most, of the prisoners at these camps are accused of doing things that aren't even considered crimes in free countries, like trying to leave North Korea. Defectors' families are also often confined to labor and prison camps, and many never leave. An estimated 80,000 to 120,000 people are imprisoned in these brutal facilities, where the conditions are said to be brutally inhumane. Inmates are subjected to torture, beatings, starvation, and other abuse, as well as execution. Those who are not starved, worked, or abused to death often succumb to diseases and health conditions that they receive no treatment for and are expected to continue working with. Due to the constant lack of food, many resort to eating rats, snakes, tree bark, grass, and other creatures that most people wouldn't eat if they had any other choice. And those who get caught foraging for these items are subject to being beaten or even killed. As you can probably imagine, prisoners at these camps have a much lower expected lifespan than other North Koreans, who also suffer greatly from malnutrition, illness, and other effects of poverty, limited access to healthcare, and abuse at the hands of the state. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now.